This is where it began. Here, in the exact geographic center of the United States. Grand Island, Nebraska. The men were brought here from every corner of the country, and a few corners outside the country. They were a hand-picked American mixture of draftees and West Pointers, of butchers, teachers, and bankers, of your sons, husbands, and fathers. They were men like Kenneth Gibson of Salt Lake City, who served in England in the Far East, who enlisted as a private and was now a full colonel. John Van Trigg of Ottawa, Illinois, and the South Pacific. Gordon Wong of Boise, Idaho, and Canton, China. Fred Montgomery, a B-24 gunner from the Aleutians. Harry Brand, a B-17 flight chief, decorated in the battles of Guadalcanal and Midway. They were men who had flown in forts or liberators in all of the combat theaters. But now they were introduced to a ship that was something else again. She was the B-29, the Superfort, with 2,200 horsepower in each of 4 engines, with a fuel capacity equal to that of a railroad tank car, a tail that climbed 2 stories into the air, a body longer than a Corvette, designed to carry more destruction and carry it higher, faster, farther than any bomber ever built before. And to complete this mission, that's exactly what she was going to have to do. The day they first took up a 29, the men felt like the Wright brothers all over again. Better be good, fella. Here goes $1 million on the wing. By the second flight, they were in love with the ship. And old hands. And starting to get impatient. But the Army told them nothing. Just kept them flying. And kept them wondering. They wondered about when they'd finally be off. Which way they'd go. How they'd do. And how long it would be before they'd be on their way home again. Well, while they were wondering, the big wheels decided. Almost the first the men knew about it. It was 5 in the morning and they were on their way. The chaplain gave each of the crews a St. Christopher medal. Christopher's the patron saint of travelers, he explained before he blessed them. And if there's one thing you boys are going to do, it's travel. The chaplain was right. This was the takeoff for one of the greatest mass flights in history. First lap, from Grand Island, 1,321 miles westward to Matherfield, California. Matherfield was their POAE, Port of Aerial Embarkation. Here the crews had to go through a final production line checkup. Then they were ready for the second lap. From Matherfield to Pearl Harbor, 2,415 miles further west. When they passed over the Golden Gate Bridge, it was like having a door shut in their faces. So long, California. So long, USA. On this first overwater hop, it was the navigators who were on the spot. With all their fancy equipment, their minds still had to make the final calculations. An error of 2 degrees would wind their ship up over nothing but ocean, with empty gas tanks. Diamond Head. Right on the nose. Good old navigator. The crews relaxed. Now they began to think about hula girls and the beach at Waikiki. At Pearl Harbor, however, they found themselves restricted to the airfield. The only hula girls they saw were painted on the doors of the PX. For something much bigger was in the making. In an office on that same field, a new bomber command was being born. The 21st, Brigadier General Haywood Hansel commanding, to include all the planes and all the crews that had left Nebraska. Hansel conferred with Lieutenant General Millard Harmon, General Arnold's deputy for B-29 activities in the Pacific. And the details were set for the 21st Bomber Command's initial strike. After briefing next morning, General Hansel and the men left Hawaii. Their final base was no longer a mystery. 4,000 miles farther west, with only one refueling stop on the way, lay the island of Saipan. Less than 4 months before, it had still been in the hands of the Japanese. That was something for the men to think about. It was for them that the Battle of Saipan was fought, for a base big enough to hold their B-29s. Soldiers, sailors, and Marines paid a price for that base. Afterward, aviation engineers and service groups sweated over it. That too was for the B-29s. Realizing it made every man anxious to get there, to make Saipan pay off.
The first element of the 21st Bomber Command has arrived. When we've done some more fighting, we'll do some more talking. Thank you.
The crews found Saipan to be a paradise, free from any of the discomforts borne by war-oppressed civilians at home. Plenty of airy apartments, nicely decorated. Adjoining showers. No long lines at the local barber shop. Reasonably priced concerts. Private beach club. And elegant sun deck. Only trouble was, their neighbors got a little noisy. B-29s on Saipan were like artillery pointed at the heart of Japan. The Nips made a desperate attempt to knock the base out. came over at night, too. They paid admission. But they got some of ours. The Japs might just as well have tried to stop Niagara Falls. The 21st Bomber Command was ready to hit its first target.
Our target for today is one of 3 of the Nakajima aircraft plants located 11 miles west of Tokyo.
The men had hoped the first one would be Tokyo, and they were delighted. But they weren't kidding themselves. Not even those who'd been over Berlin or Ploiesti or Vienna. London to Berlin and back was 1,000 miles. The Foggia-Ploiesti run, 1,150 miles. The Foggia-Vienna run, 900 miles. But Saipan to Tokyo and back was over 3,000 miles. No land-based planes had ever hit this target before. Crew chiefs and maintenance men worked right through the afternoon and night. The ordnance men fused the payload. Dawn. The coolness reminded them of that other dawn not so long ago in Nebraska. Only now they were sweating. It was kind of funny to think of themselves making history. The lead ship was A-1, Dauntless-Dottie. Its pilot was Robert Morgan. Its bombardier, Vince Evans. Remember them? They were the pilot and bombardier who flew 25 missions over Germany in a B-17 called the Memphis Belle. 5 o'clock. Back home, you'd have been turning over for another couple hours sleep, or just coming in from a date. Superfort carried well over 7,000 gallons of gas, more than 6,000 rounds of ammunition. With their great load of 500-pound general-purpose bombs and incendiaries, they weighed almost 70 tons apiece. This was the final lap of the long mission. Over 10,000 miles, almost halfway around the world, to return a visit that had been paid to Pearl Harbor 3 years before. Pearl Harbor was on their minds now. The 2,000 American dead, Hickam Field in flames, the Arizona and the Oklahoma and the Pennsylvania. There were other things on their minds. There was the triumphant feeling of being the first, the advance guard of a long procession of superforts that would smash Tokyo. There was the grim satisfaction of making the Nipponese High Command eat its words. Tokyo, the Japanese High Command had broadcast, is out of range of land-based American bombers. There was the uncertainty, the fear of the unknown. 1,600 miles lay between them and their target. What kind of a defense would the Japs put up? How much flak? How accurate? 1,600 miles lay between the target and getting back to Saipan. How many of them would get back? They recalled very clearly the fate of the Doolittle flyers who had crashed in Japan and been captured. 6 hours later, through the clouds, they saw it. Fujiyama, ancient symbol of Japan. Here come some modern symbols. Phosphorus bombs and flak and fighters. Inside a superfort, you can't see its guns. You fire by remote control. But the guns are there. And now, below them, is Tokyo. Within a radius of 15 miles of the Imperial Palace live 7 million Japanese. A people we used to think of as small, dainty, polite, concerning themselves only with floral arrangements and rock gardens and the cultivation of silkworms. But it isn't silkworms, and it isn't imperial palaces these men are looking for. In the suburbs of Tokyo is the huge Nakajima aircraft plant. Well, Bud, what are you waiting for? The B-29s that had taken off at dawn, all but 2 got back to Saipan that night. And that's where it ended. The first Superfortress mission to Tokyo. But more than an ending, it was a beginning. As the commanding general of the Army Air Forces put it,
no part of the Japanese Empire is now out of our range. No war factory too remote to feel our bombs. The battle for Japan is now underway with full speed ahead.